The evening my spouse invited her superior for dinner, I wasn't meant to be present, perhaps making the ensuing incident all the more unexpected. My name is Daniel Brooks, aged 39, who spent most of my life convinced I grasped people's nature. That night, though, I learned a crucial lesson. Those closest often conceal the most secrets. The sequence began with an innocuous action, a rescheduled meeting. I had intended to work late that day, but at 5 p.m. my client altered plans for tomorrow, allowing me to return home earlier than typical. Upon entering the house, an unsettling sense of displacement washed over me. It wasn't incorrect, simply odd. The lighting was subdued, background music played softly, and a strong, deliberate scent of costly perfume permeated the atmosphere, not the kind my wife commonly wore. I gently placed my keys on a table, calling out Lena's name. No reply. Stepping further inside, voices became audible. From the dining room emanated a composed, recognizable male voice. I halted my steps to listen intently. "I warned you he wouldn't be here," my spouse whispered soothingly. Her tone was tranquil, casual, comforting. My heart contracted. "You appear quite certain," I remarked. "Indeed, I am," she retorted. "He invariably works late on Thursdays." For a brief instant, I remained motionless, breathless, thoughtless, as a premonition within me had begun to comprehend. Yet I was not prepared to acknowledge it just yet. Entering the doorway, the scene became apparent. The table was adorned, candles flickered, 2 glasses of wine stood, and seated opposite my wife was a man in an expensive attire, roughly 40 years old, exuding self-assuredness. The type of man who carried himself with absolute conviction. My spouse looked up, and for the first time that evening her certainty wavered. "Daniel!" The man turned gradually, his countenance serene, unperturbed. "Ah," he stated, seemingly anticipating my arrival as if I were the interloper. I glanced at my spouse. "You invited him here," I inferred silently. She remained unresponsive, rising slowly. "It's not as you think," I almost chuckled. "It rarely is." He too rose, smoothed his jacket. "Let's avoid awkwardness," he suggested. "Too late for that," I retorted. I glanced around the room, taking in the candles, wine, music, all meticulously arranged. Not for me, but for him. "How long had this been going on?" I inquired tentatively. My wife hesitated before replying softly, "A few months." While I was engrossed in work, while I trusted her, while we were constructing a life I believed we both cherished, I nodded slowly. Then I turned to the man. "Your superior?" I asked, though his tone unsettled me, too casual, too assured. He showed no signs of concern whatsoever. Then he made a statement that altered the course of everything. "You should take a seat," he said. "We've been discussing you." For a brief moment I did just that, drawing out a chair and sitting at the table, since now I wished to listen to every word. "What were you saying about me?" I inquired. The man lifted his glass, scrutinized it before fixing his gaze on me. "Your wife regards you as an honest man," he revealed. I glanced at her. She looked apprehensive now, unlike before. "And you?" I probed. He smiled. "I find you to be predictable." The word echoed in the silence, predictable, as if it were a rebuke. I subtly leaned back. "Fascinating," I commented. "And could you clarify what that implies?" He took a sip of wine. "It implies you stick to routines, you trust readily, you seldom question." He paused. "That simplifies matters." My wife murmured softly, "Stop." Yet he persisted tranquilly, just as planned for the evening. Her countenance had transformed. The earlier self-assuredness vanished, supplanted by remorse. That's when it dawned on me that this wasn't merely an error. This transcended emotions. It seemed orchestrated, premeditated. So I chose an action out of the ordinary. I smiled. Both of them noticed, given its incongruity with the circumstances. "What's amusing?" he inquired. I placed my hands flat on the tabletop. "You suggested I don't ask questions?" He gave a nod. "Yes." "I believe you're mistaken." I delved into my pocket, extracted my phone, and positioned it on the table. "I've been posing queries for quite some time now," I stated. The man remained impassive, but my wife's demeanor shifted. "What do you imply?" she inquired softly. I struck the screen, accessed a document, and angled it toward them. Text messages, images, dates, and more were displayed. A hush fell over the room. You invaded my privacy," she murmured. "No," I corrected gently. The man leaned slightly nearer. Now he was intrigued. "So what does this demonstrate to you?" he inquired. I smiled once more. "It demonstrates," I replied softly, "that I'm not as foreseeable as you assumed." I moved closer and softened my voice, and it proves that tonight things didn't unfold as you anticipated. For the first time, his self-assurance faltered slightly because now he grasped something. He was no longer in command. I rose from the table. "My lawyer has already taken care of everything," I stated casually. My wife paled. "You're bluffing," she said. "I'm not." I looked at her one last time. "You believed I wouldn't return home tonight." A pause ensued. "You thought I wouldn't notice." Another silence followed. You thought I wouldn't react. Her eyes displayed something she hadn't shown all night, fear. I picked up my keys, approached the door, and just before leaving, I said one last thing. The meal is concluded. The door shut behind me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something unexpected. No rage, no sorrow, yet liberation, as occasionally the greatest blunder humans commit lies in presuming constancy. Sometimes, a single unforeseen instant can disprove such assumptions.